Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Case For. I'm your host, Matt Campobasso. There's a concept in forestry called a controlled burn. To the casual observer, it looks like a disaster. You see smoke, you see flames, you see perfectly good trees being scorched, and it looks like the end. But for the forester who's doing the controlled burn, it's the only way to save the forest. You have to burn away all the dead brush and all the invasive species to make room for the new growth that's actually supposed to be there. If you don't, the whole thing eventually chokes itself out. In our lives, we call that starting over. And just like those forest fires, it's terrifying. It can feel like destruction, but often the most dangerous thing you can do is to let that dead brush keep piling up because you're afraid of the match. Today, my guest, Brooke Marsalla, is making a case that will hit close to home for anyone who has ever felt stuck in a life they no longer recognize. In a moment, Brooke will enter the courtroom and make the case for starting over, even when it's terrifying. All right, welcome back. Today, we're going to put something on the record that's not just a law, it's not a policy, it's not a movie, it's a decision. Sometimes it's a decision you make for yourself, and sometimes it's a decision that's made for you by another person, by the universe. But in those instances, definitely not by you. Today's guest, Brooke Marsalla, and I have actually never met prior to today's taping. She saw a post of mine on LinkedIn, reached out, and asked to discuss appearing on the podcast as a guest. We exchanged a few notes, and now here we are. Brooke, really happy to have you here. This is our first time, which is unique for me. I've had guests on before, but you are the first complete stranger to sit across from me virtually on this podcast. Before we jump to your case, I'd love the jury, our listeners, to meet you as a whole person, not just a headline. So please give us the background. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us about the world you live in, your career, your family, the whole picture.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I am a realtor. I'm a mom of 3 daughters, anywhere from 17 to 22, single parent. It's really just honestly every day consists of work and running and keeping up with my kids and all of their chaos. I know they're much older, but they definitely keep me on my toes.
I have 3 kids myself. They're younger. My youngest is 7. I have a 12-year-old daughter, so 2 daughters, and then my son is 16. So where you left off, I picked up. It's a lot, though. I know regardless of how old your kids are, they say little kids, little problems. But my 16-year-old, he's incredible, and I love him. But some of the things that he brings to me as a parent can be challenging. So I'm sure 17 to 22 is a lot more than just changing diapers and warming up bottles.
Oh my gosh. I actually always wish if we could just go back in time, because it was a lot easier.
Yeah, it's, and everybody tells you, right? They say it goes so fast, and you're like, it feels pretty slow right now, and then you blink.
Oh no, it goes fast. My youngest is graduating, and it is really tugging at my heart. So.
I'm graduating high school, right, at 17?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So, Brooke, now that we know who you are, let's talk about the case that you came on to make. In your own words, give us an opening statement. And you mentioned just before we started recording that your sister, her fiance, and your stepdad are all attorneys. You're obviously not an attorney, so I don't expect you to have the rules of procedure down, but give it your best shot. Tell us who you're here to make this case for, and what do you want them to know about starting over before we get into the exhibits?
Who am I making this case for? I would say, honestly, my case could relate to anybody, but maybe specifically to the moms out there. I went through a divorce, so it could be relating to someone there. And then honestly, just starting completely over in my career as well. So I know that probably applies to a lot of people. So for me, I'm hoping I can relate to quite a few people in this area. But the biggest thing is, starting over not only in life, but also in career.
So let's talk about both in life and your career. Let's start with the realtor part of your personality. How long have you been a realtor?
So I've been in real estate for 6 years. Before that, I was in corporate sales. I worked for a men's skincare line that was based out of Texas, and I was a trainer. I did sales. I called on high-end accounts like such as Nordstrom's, Blue Mercury, Sephora, and I did that for 15 years. And then right at COVID, not only was I going through a divorce, but I was also at a place where I didn't, they didn't need me anymore. Retail had been changing over the last couple of years. Nobody was really going into stores. We were just shopping online. So a lot of my job had already slowly been changing over the years, even leading up to COVID. And it was just basically, we no longer really need you or your role. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Not only am I going through a divorce, I no longer have a job. So I'm like, okay, what are we going to do?
As I mentioned a few minutes ago, sometimes you start over because you want to, sometimes you
Yeah.
start over because you have to. Sounds like yours was more the universe tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, it's time to figure out what comes next. And guess what? It's not going to be the same old, same old. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love my job, but yeah, and honestly too, I'm actually grateful for the start over. I'm truly grateful for it. Because it's changed a lot of things for me. My divorce and also my career. I feel like I've just blossomed as a person and as a mom. So it's been a great thing.
It sounds like 6 years in to starting over, you've got enough distance to really look back and be proud of the progress you've made, which sounds incredible. At the time that things were changing, at the time that your divorce kicked off, at the time that you were told, hey, thanks for 15 years, but we no longer need you, I would
Mhm.
imagine there wasn't as much gratitude, or maybe there was. You tell me, but
Uh,
I would imagine
Truthfully,
human nature is usually, why is this happening to me? Or people are scared. How do you connect with those feelings, or did you back then?
oh, absolutely. I was not elated in any way. I was devastated. I was very scared because I was a single parent. I had my three daughters, and I've always wanted to be nothing but a great role model to them. I've always wanted my girls to, stand on their own, support themselves, and to thrive as individuals. So for me, I was like, woof, like it was like a gut punch. Like I was like, okay, what exactly am I going to do? Not was it just fear, but it was like, what am I going to do? I need to make money. It was COVID also. Most places were shut down. I had a lot that felt like it felt very daunting. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Am I going to be able to make this work? And I had many nights where I would just like pray and cry about it. And I'm like, honestly, I just have to figure this out. Because for me, I just couldn't fail. I had far too many responsibilities and I had to figure it out.
I think probably most people listening, maybe they didn't have what sounds like an avalanche that hit you, all at
Yeah.
once, but I'm sure they've
Mhm.
had different versions of the bottom falling out, whether it's losing a job or a relationship ending. And a lot of, what I've read about change and reacting and responding to uninvited change is about taking small steps. Did
Mhm.
you find taking small steps in the beginning helped you kind of climb out of that original shock that you were feeling?
Oh, absolutely. As much as I kept doubting myself, I also was like, okay, I got this. And yes, it is about like the small steps. I had met my boyfriend also during COVID, like, because I had been going through a divorce for quite some time. So I had already
Mhm.
been single for 3 years and I had met my boyfriend at the time. And he was like, what about real estate? That just became a lot of uncertainty too, because it's like, okay, what do I actually know about real estate at the time? I didn't know a whole lot other than the fact of, I bought my first home at 21 and then every couple of years would build another house and kind of upgrade and upgrade. And then I start going through my divorce. And I was just like, all I really know about real estate is building a house. And I always loved looking at houses, but that does not make me a realtor. So yes, I had a sales background, which really does go hand in hand. But at the time, I guess I didn't really see it that way. So I was like, okay, I've always been in the kind of like the beauty skincare world, and now I'm going to sell houses. It felt a little overwhelming, but once I started taking my courses to become an agent, I was like, okay, all right. Like I was very intrigued, and I felt like it really was something that I could just slowly get a grasp on and own it.
So it sounds like definitely small steps, going from
Oh yeah,
feeling like you have no idea what you're going to do to your
yeah,
boyfriend saying, "Hey, what about real estate?" to you
yeah,
saying, "What does that mean?" Right. And it starts with
yeah,
you do research and you
yeah,
start immersing yourself and you think, does this have potentials? I would have to imagine along the way of the real estate journey, at some point you took one step that made you feel some hope. Do you recall one day thinking to yourself, "Oh, I'm actually doing this," or how did it feel when you sold your first home?
Oh, well, I loved selling my first home. I am such like a I love I love the overall experience and customer experience. So like, have you ever went and shopped at Nordstrom and I guess just basically had that customer service where they like really cater to you, they listen to you, they know your name, they call you by name. It's very first class. You feel like they're paying attention, like they're listening.
I've only been in the Nordstrom probably 20 times in my life, which maybe that's a lot. I don't know. But there's one in a shopping mall that's probably about a half hour from where I'm at right now, and also about 30 minutes from where I grew up. And
Yeah,
the thing about Nordstrom, you mentioned the customer experience. My
yeah,
mom's sister, my aunt, who has since passed away, she worked at Nordstrom. And I always remember her telling us this story that
yeah,
if you worked at the customer service desk at Nordstrom,
yeah.
whatever somebody walked in with to return, whether Nordstrom sold it or not, if a customer said, I bought this here and this is what I paid, Nordstrom would give a refund or a credit.
And they
So
truly
one time,
did. Yeah,
well, and I never had any way to validate that story,
yeah.
but I remember I said to her once, like, what's the craziest thing that somebody brought in? And I'm thinking it's like, I don't know. This is like the 90s. So who knows back then?
Yeah.
But she said snow tires. And I said,
Oh.
someone brought in 4 snow tires. And she said, yeah, they backed their car up. They said, I have 4 snow tires. I bought them from Nordstrom. I paid whatever, $800. And Nordstrom gave them a refund. And I just
Oh
was
my God.
like, that's a crazy story. Again, I don't know
Yeah.
if it's true or not. My aunt was definitely prone to weaving a tale here and there, but it does go hand in hand. So I couldn't hear you mention Nordstrom and not bring up that story. So
After supporting their stores for 15 years, they truly do take that customer experience to a whole nother level. So where I'm going with this is like that was that always stuck with me. And I feel like I took that customer experience into real estate, which I love. Like, I naturally love to make people feel warm and inviting. So when I'm working with someone in real estate, um, I truly care, like maybe a little too much, to be honest with you. I get a little more invested than I probably should. I think that's also the mom in me. But I truly want to make sure that every step of the way they feel supported, they feel like they're heard, because buying a house is a roller coaster of emotions.
it is.
You are excited, then you're nervous, then you're like, oh no, like you have an inspection and you hear something's wrong and you think the world is ending. And so you definitely have to adjust to your buyers or sellers roller coaster of emotion. And I feel like I try my best to really accommodate and put myself in there and understand where they're coming from, but also work through any problems or solutions with them. I just feel like it's important to make sure that people always feel supported and valued.
It is an emotional process. Number one, it's for most people, myself included, buying a home is the biggest purchase you'll make or that you've made
Yeah.
up until that point in your life. And
Yeah.
it's scary. You look at 20 houses and you find one and you're like, okay, now that I've seen this house, I have to have it. It's such a weird emotional
Yeah.
experience. And then if you really find that house and you're like, this is it, to your point, it's a roller coaster. And I would imagine I've worked with different realtors in my life, buying and selling homes. And in my experience, it's those that kind of show up and meet you where you are emotionally that are the best
Hmm.
ones, that make you feel
Yeah.
heard or seen. Like you said, buying a home is an emotional experience. But I think anybody who's in like a services industry or a sales industry, like you want the person that's going to be writing that check and writing every
Yeah.
mortgage check for however many years to feel like, hey, the person that I'm working with gets it. And they can
Yeah.
appreciate, not that they know what this feels like right now in this moment, but
Hmm.
they understand where I'm coming from. And I think that's a huge part, especially when you're feeling emotionally exposed. Before we get into the exhibits, which I want to do in just one moment, I
Hmm.
would ask you a question, and please be honest, where you are today and where you were, let's say, in January of 2016, so 10 years ago. Obviously, a lot of things in your life broke. You fell pretty hard, it sounds like, at a couple points. And are you happier right now than you were 10 years ago?
I am. I'm so much happier. I will say I I still have little things, that I think about, but my 2016 to today would be so proud of me. And I
I'm
am
sure.
happy.
Well, that sounds like a really great start to making a case for starting over. So with that, let's jump into the exhibits. If you've listened to the podcast, I'm a lawyer by training. It's what I do for my day job, and I love good structure. So the first exhibit I want to talk about in support of your case is what I call the invisible tax of inertia. I think that staying put, it has a cost. It feels safe and it's predictable. I don't think anybody likes too much change, especially all at once. But
Yeah.
I think that when you stand still, yes, life is predictable, but I think there's a tax there and it's a quieter one. But talk to me about Brooke pre-COVID, pre the decision to get a divorce, pre losing your job. You just said a moment ago, you're much happier now than you were then. I'm sure when you were in the throes of everything that was happening, you were like, I just want things to go back to the way they were.
Hmm.
But obviously, before everything started changing, I have to imagine there were things, cracks that you were feeling that you kind of just brushed over or you didn't want to acknowledge. Was that your experience?
Oh, for sure. Honestly, I didn't have much of a voice. I didn't have the best marriage. So I literally just had my life that revolved around my kid. I was like the spokesperson of our family, I always used to say, because anything and everything to do with my kids, whether it was sports, school, teachers, events, games, I was there. Practices, I did not miss one of them. Not only because I wanted to be there, but because I always wanted my girls to know that I was their biggest fan. And I still am to this day. For me, back then, I feel like I probably did even more just because I never wanted to be around my ex-husband because he was such an awful person, because I just didn't have much of a voice. I stayed very quiet. I was just very go with the flow. I never had much of an opinion. And a lot of times I just lived in fear of, okay, well, my opinion doesn't matter anyways, so why should I say anything? From then to now, you might not like me because I'm pretty opinionated. Um, um, and I'm not opinionated to be defiant. I'm just opinionated because now I will stand up for anybody and for anything and for myself. And I've really always been that way, but I'm even more that way now. So,
Prior to COVID and the divorce starting and the whole career change, it sounds like you just kind of put yourself on mute a little bit and you just muted yourself to show up and be things for other people. And
yeah,
coming through all of that, starting over, you made a conscious choice to say, hey, you know what? Those parts of me that are material to who I am as a human, I'm not gonna put a lid on that anymore. And like you said, not to be controversial or to upset
yeah,
people, but
yeah,
you have opinions, and I think everybody's opinions matter. So it's good that
yeah.
you've been able to rediscover your voice. So Exhibit B, it's more about fear. And I want to talk about fear as a signal, not as a stop sign.
Hmm.
So when I think about starting things over, whether it's a change in a career or a relationship or anything like that, you think about change and it's terrifying because it threatens specific things,
Hmm.
threatens your status, it threatens stability, your identity, approval. You spend a few minutes just now talking about being the spokesperson of your family, but
Hmm.
you know, you kind of had to shift out of that, it sounds like a little bit, and evolve who you were to account for the changes that were happening in your life. So for you, when you were changing, when things were happening, how did fear show up day to day? I'm a dad of three, as I mentioned. My
Hmm.
kids, when something new presents itself that they've never done, in fact, my son and I were driving the other day. He just turned 16 last month and he was going into a restaurant to apply for a job. And he did it, but I could see the fear on his face. And it was something that I would walk in and do in the blink of an eye without thinking about it. But it's the
Hmm.
unknown. So when you
Yeah.
found yourself standing and the entire ground underneath you shifting, did you freeze? Did you overthink things? Did you get busy with distractions? How did you respond?
Oh, I'm an overthinker, all right. I'm a details person. And so I think in that manner, I kind of drive people nuts, including my kids. I always want all the details before I can make a good decision. I understand that's not always the case, but I'm always like, okay, the more details, the better. Um, before I can really like jump all in. And I
Yeah.
can sometimes overthink myself out of something, which is definitely a flaw within me. Because I do become fearful of like making the wrong choice or saying the wrong thing. I do always choose my words very wisely because I do want to always be respectful of others, but
Yeah.
even my kids. Um, and so I've definitely had my fair share of all of those things. And they
Okay.
they even still show up today. I just even right now, I'm working for a builder in new construction and it's been great, but a part of me keeps feeling like maybe I should start going in a different direction, maybe adding some more things. And I've been thinking this, to be honest with you, for 6 to 8 months, and here I am, I'm
Okay.
still here, and I haven't made a decision. And I'm just like, what is wrong with me? So yeah.
I mean, you know what they call that, right? That's paralysis by analysis. And
That is me to a
I,
T.
yeah, it can be me sometimes too. As I've gotten older, I think I've shed a little bit of that. You kind of
Yeah.
just say, for me personally, I think, okay, do I have enough information? I'm not being impulsive. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna go, and then you roll the dice. And I have to sometimes look back. My daughter, who's 7, went through a little bit of a I don't want to go to school today phase a few months ago.
Yeah.
And it was the unknown for her. And
Hmm.
she would just overthink it at bedtime and then in the morning. And I started pointing her back to prior days of school and how happy she was when she would walk out. And I said, hey, look, even on bad days, you make it through. And so
Yeah.
it's hard though. If you're a thoughtful person,
Hmm.
you can swing that pendulum too far in the direction of being too thoughtful, and then
Yes.
6 to 8 months later you're second guessing something, and I'm sure you'd rather use that brain power on something else. I'm sure at this point your brain's like, okay, we've been through this.
Yes. Yeah. It's just like
Well,
make
maybe
a decision already.
maybe talking about it here on this podcast will help you make a decision and set it down.
Yeah.
So all right, but you know what? In the law, we call that discovery. You don't just
Hmm.
run into a courtroom and try a case. You have to understand the lay of the land. What did people
Yeah.
say? What did the documents say? Part of making any decision is discovery. And in the law, and I'm sure if you ask your stepdad or your sister or her fiance,
Yeah.
if any of them are trial lawyers or litigators, discovery
Hmm.
can just go on and on and on. And it's a lot of lawyers' least favorite part of practicing law. And
Yeah.
so it sounds like you've done your discovery. I would encourage you to make a call on this house and move on.
Maybe this will be my tipping point.
All
I
right. Well,
figure it out.
hopefully. So let's talk about our next exhibit. And exhibit C is what I call blueprints over inspiration. So when someone restarts something, it's
Mhm.
built on structure. You can get forced into it, but people can also spend that time kind of trying to figure out what happened if it's happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
So as a lawyer, I mentioned to you right before we hopped on, I used to be a trial lawyer. I'm now an in-house attorney, and I manage legal function for companies. You don't wake up and say, you know what, today we're going to throw everything we've done out the window. You have a
Mm-hmm.
blueprint and a process, and you're building it. So to anyone who's listening, who's contemplating restarting something, whatever that is, a workout plan, a design plan, a search for a house, a new job, or a new relationship, give us 3 steps that you would suggest they take as they rebuild or start over.
I think one of the biggest things is just having confidence in yourself. I know that's maybe not a step, but confidence is a big thing for me. And building a routine, I think building a routine is also really important. I'm not really a fly by the seat of your pants kind of person. I think it's important to stay in a routine. You have your confidence, you have your routine, and then in that, you just need to go. You just need to go for it. You need to have the courage and do it.
You were talking about confidence, whether that's a step. I mean, there are moments where I am paralyzed by fear or uncertainty, and it's absolutely a step, at least for me, to stop and say, you've got this. You've
Yeah.
thought about it. You're a kind person. You're a good person. You care. That's giving
Hmm.
yourself permission, right, to then start moving forward. So I can absolutely see that as a valuable first step. When you were in the midst of the change, the really heavy days, was there anything that you identified? We just talked about things that you added or that you rebuilt with. Anything you kind of
Hmm.
stripped out that you felt like was hindering you or preventing you from moving forward that you had to say, you got to stop doing this. This is not helpful.
I still kind of do it to this day, to be honest with you. I'm kind of my worst enemy, but I compare myself a lot to others and I really try not to. But comparison is really a thief. It doesn't do you any good, doesn't do you any justice. So, that's really something I still work on seriously. That's daily. And
Can I
I do
can I
think,
tell you a secret?
yeah,
Everybody compares themselves to other people. I
yeah,
mean, people may say they don't. Everyone
yeah,
does. Even the most confident
yeah,
people I know on the outside. I think it's human nature. It's
yeah.
in our DNA. I read something once about that comparison mode for humans is in our
Hmm.
DNA because when people traveled in packs or tribes and they moved day to day to find food, if you
Hmm.
felt like you weren't doing good enough, you had that fear of being left behind, which back then, 1,000 years ago, it meant you starved. And so it's a
Yeah.
survival mechanism. The first step is acknowledging that you do it to yourself, at least,
Mhm,
because then you can
mhm.
try to catch yourself in the moment and say, you know what, this isn't about what somebody put online or somebody's house or their car or,
Yeah.
whatever. If you're proud of yourself, and I tell my kids this all the time, like your only job is to be better today than you were yesterday. We're all going to compare ourselves, but to your point, you hit the nail on the head. Comparison is the thief of joy. Do you catch yourself when you're comparing yourself to people or in other situations?
Sometimes I'll kinda get in that rabbit hole, and then I'm like, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing?" And I have to, like, snap myself out of it. I I definitely will catch myself, and I don't even know sometimes why I'm doing it, to be honest with you. I'm hard on myself, just naturally. I really am. I really hold myself to a very high standard, and I see my oldest do the same thing, and sometimes I'm like, "Oh gosh," because she's so hard on herself, and I'm just like, "Have a little grace on yourself," and at the same time, I'm like, I have to tell myself that too.
I'm sure any parents listening are hearing things in what you're saying and thinking to themselves, I know exactly what you mean. I'm the same way. I'm hard on
Yeah,
myself. I think all of my kids are to a degree, but my middle child, she is me in a 12-year-old
yeah,
girl's body. And I'm just
yeah,
like, I tell her, like, hey, give yourself a break. You did your best.
mhm.
And then I'll think about it later and I'll think, wow, I could stand to look at myself in the mirror and tell myself those same things. Do you have conversations with her about that? Like when you see her modeling that behavior?
Oh, yeah, my oldest, she's so much like me, but she has little different characteristics that make her, special to who she is, but she's a lot like me, and I always have to feel like I always have to talk to her, and we have, like, such a great relationship, I just adore her, she's in Arizona most of the time. And so if even one day goes by, she'll call me and she'll be like, I miss you. I haven't talked to you. I got to FaceTime you. I need to see your face. So that tells me I did something right because she loves her mama.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
That's a
yeah,
testament right there. Kids don't do that by accident. That's an intentional
yeah,
thing.
yeah. I mean,
Go
I've
ahead.
always
Sorry.
tried with all of my girls just to be there to support them. And now sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes my opinion comes flying out and they're like, Mom. So they'll even check me sometimes.
Yeah. It's good that they have that confidence, though. It sounds like you
Yeah,
raised them to be comfortable with boundaries. And I think that's a
yeah.
big responsibility for parents. With that, I want to move past our exhibits and I want to talk
Hmm.
about some objections. So, in any trial, when someone's making a case, there's always a lawyer that jumps up and waves their arms around and says, I object.
Hmm.
This case is nonsense. I don't think this case is nonsense. I think your case is a great one, but I want to make sure that we run through good procedure here. So I'm going to put some
Yeah.
objections in front of you, things that somebody listening to this might think to themselves. And I'd
Hmm.
love you to just tell me what your initial reaction is. Maybe you agree, but if you disagree, obviously feel free. So
Hmm.
the first one is, and I recognize that a lot of what prompted you to start over was a result of things in your life changing, not necessarily because you chose for them to change, but it
Yeah.
changed. And a lot of change is
Hmm.
like that. But for people who are thinking about starting over or standing at the precipice of a situation where they have to start over, they may think that
Hmm.
starting over is a privilege or it's a luxury. Not everybody can just hit reset. People have kids and bills and caregiving and debt. Being thoughtful about the fact that that's true. And for
Yeah.
people who maybe have a choice, but say, you know what, I don't have that privilege, what would you say to them?
I feel like everybody has that privilege. I feel like anyone can start over, truthfully. You just can't be like me and overthink. I feel like anybody and everybody can start over at any stage of their life, at any day and time. It really is just going to be something you have to find within yourself if you can take the steps to make it happen.
I think that's a very valid response. When I think about the times in my life where I've started over, the first thing that you have to overcome is fear.
Mhm.
Fear of being viewed as a failure, fear of falling on your face, fear of what if what I'm going to start over is a mistake? What if I shouldn't start over? And you start
Yeah.
second guessing yourself. So I think your point, it resonates with me. You have to have that confidence that, hey,
Hmm.
you thought about it. And I loved what you said a moment ago. Everybody has the right to start over if it's what's best for them. So
Hmm. Yeah.
the next objection I have here is, what if I start over and I fail? What if I look foolish? What if it's a waste of time? What if people who are critical of me are right? What about fear? What did you tell yourself when you were starting over? For example, let's talk about the decision to move your career into real estate. I'm sure there were moments where you thought, I shouldn't do this, or this isn't right for me. How did you overcome that?
I had a lot of fear around it, but I do feel like with anything, um, no matter if you're doing the best, the worst, maybe just okay, someone's always going to judge you or have something to say about it. I mean, it just doesn't matter. I feel like in that case, I would not let that bother you. I would not let that be a reason to hold you back because even with buyers in real estate, I have some that are just so great to work with, so appreciative, really understand, and we work well together. And then I've had a couple where no matter what you do, it's just never quite good enough. And I feel like you have that with everything in life. And someone's always out there just waiting for you to fail to put you down, which is a shame. It's just as the reality, though. People love to see people win, but they also like to see people fail.
That's my experience. While I do have an undergraduate degree in psychology, I'm not a therapist, but my
Mhm.
my not professional opinion is people who love to see others succeed are confident and they're
Mhm.
happy for the most part. People who are unhappy in their own station in life are the ones that enjoy when somebody else takes a shot and they fail. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt because I'm sure that they probably hate themselves more than they hate anybody else. And you think about going through
Yeah,
life that way, and that's got to be tough. So,
yeah.
um, okay. So I think you masterfully handled those objections. Your stepdad and your sister and her fiance would be proud. So now what I want you to do is I want you to give us a closing argument. Normally in a closing argument, you stand in front of a jury or a judge and I'll say, Your Honor, or ladies and gentlemen, here's how I proved my case. I think you've proven your case. Starting over it's a no-brainer. You should be thoughtful about it. Fear should not be the reason you don't. Even though it's
Hmm.
terrifying, if you believe it's the right thing for you, you go for it. But what I want
Yeah.
you to do is I want you to imagine someone in your life, maybe one of your daughters is
Hmm.
listening to this in 5 years and they want to talk to you, but they can't reach you. You're on some amazing vacation with your boyfriend, but they are thinking about starting over. What would you say to them in that moment about starting over?
Um, I think the biggest thing is honestly, you have to be real with yourself and what you're thinking about starting over doing doesn't make sense. Is it actually something that you could see working for you? Um, but you've also, it's just like I said before, you have to have the confidence and put a game plan together, start taking those steps and put it into action and just go for it. And if you fail, you fail. If you win, that's a huge success. And if you fail, you find something else and you have to start over again. That's the beauty of the world we live in. There's so many different opportunities to do so many different things and to be so many different people in this world. And so I feel like you shouldn't be afraid to make that leap.
You just hit something that we hadn't talked about, but starting over is not a finite thing. You can start over every day if you want. It might
Hmm.
be hard, a lot of whiplash for somebody, but yeah, you could have jumped into real estate and gotten your license and started practicing. And after a year thought, you know what? It's okay. It's fine. It's paying the bills, but I'm not the best version of myself. And you can start over again. So that's good advice
Yeah.
because if you fail, the important thing is getting back up and moving again. So
Hmm.
well put. So what I like to do on the podcast is after I or someone else makes their case, I like to take it out of, this proverbial courtroom and kind of bring it into the real world. And so what I would ask you is give us a tool. Think about someone who's listening and they want to start over tomorrow with something, but they don't know where to go to start over or how to do so. It can be small, but what is something you would recommend anybody starting over should think about doing today or tomorrow as a first step down that path?
For me personally, what's helped is I try and envision myself doing it, like manifesting myself doing it. And is it something I could really see myself doing? And I know that might sound kind of silly, but I feel really just kind of envisioning it. And I feel like the more positive and the more you speak something into existence, and that might sound kind of weird to you too, I feel like that is something that really works in your favor. I tend to go negative often, just on myself personally, not so much on others, but on myself. And I find when I shift my focus to be more positive and to really think in a more positive way, it definitely uplifts me and changes my mindset.
A couple times I've noticed you said, I might think this is silly, or someone listening might think it's silly. Obviously, we don't know each other very well, but I think visualization is an incredibly powerful tool. Back before I became an in-house attorney, I was a law firm litigator and a criminal prosecutor for 13 years. And so I tried cases. That was my job. And
Hmm.
so the night before an opening statement or a closing argument or a deposition, I would lay in bed and visualize, where am I going to stand? What am I wearing? What am I going to say? If they do this, how do
Hmm.
I respond? Visualization, I think there are people who would kind of roll their eyes at it, but I've read
Yeah.
books, athletes talk about it. It's a proven tool. So I don't think it's silly at all. And I think it's a great piece of advice to people who are thinking about starting over. It's not just thinking about what does life look like in 5 years if I'm successful. It's what does this look like when I do the first step? And if they can see themselves
Hmm.
do it, I bet you they're a lot closer to doing that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Brooke, I really appreciate you joining me here today and for reaching out on LinkedIn and for making your case. This has been really fascinating to hear you talk about your own personal agency and the decisions you've made, being faced with a decision of, hey, do I give up or do I start putting the pieces back together 6 years ago? Obviously, you've had quite a journey. I know you're still on that journey. I'm sure you've taught your daughters a lot on the way. And so I just really appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable and sharing that. And to everybody listening, thank you for spending time with Brooke and me in the courtroom today. This has been the case for starting over, even when it's terrifying. If this episode reaches you or makes you think about, should I start a controlled burn in my life? I'd love for you to help us spread the word about this episode and Brooke's story. You can subscribe to The Case For with Matt Campobasso on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. You can share it with someone who's currently being paralyzed by the status quo and help put Brooke's story out there. And if you're out there and you need to buy a house, obviously find Brooke Marsalla online and let her do her thing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great chatting with you, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
It's been my pleasure. I appreciate you coming here. And for those of you listening, thank you for listening. And please remember, whatever your case is, don't be afraid to build it and carry it out into the real world.